So this is question number 7. It reads, compute the determinant and state how many and what type of solutions you will have. Well, in the last question, we saw the quadratic formula used, and the determinant is these values underneath the square root. So the determinant is b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so again, if we have to use the determinant or the quadratic formula, we have to make sure that all terms are on that left-hand side, which they are. 3x squared plus 2x plus 4 equals 0 is on the left-hand side. So now I'm going to label things. So a equals 3, b equals 2, and c equals 4. So now I'm going to plug and play. So wherever I see b, I'm going to plug in 2, minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is 4. All right, so 2 squared is 4, and 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 times 4 is 48. So I get 4 minus 48, which is negative 44. So remember, the determinant is underneath a radical. So if you have a negative underneath a square root, then that means you have two imaginary solutions. Okay, because you're going to get an imaginary number with that negative 44. You know, that's going to be like square root of 44i, which would be 2 radical 11i if you simplify it, right? By the way, if you got a positive as your determinant, you're going to get 2 real numbers. And the other option is if you get 0. If you get 0, then that means that you do not have 2 answers. You're going to have just 1 real solution. So those are the possibilities you can get. All right, number 8. For questions 8 through 14, solve the equation. So 8 says we have to solve 3x to the 4th, which equals 27x squared. Okay, it doesn't say what I'm supposed to do with it. So what I'm going to do is move the 27 over to the left-hand side. And then I'm going to look at it. So again, I have to factor to be able to solve. So the first question is, does it have a GCF? Which it does. It is 3x squared. So if I divide both terms by 3x squared, I get 3x to the 4th divided by 3x squared, which is x squared. And now I'm going to take negative 27 and divide that by 3, which by the way is 9. And then the x squared divided by x squared goes away. Be careful with these though, because you have to analyze whenever you have a binomial, see if it is a difference of perfect squares, which it is. X is a perfect square and so is 9, and there's a negative sign. So remember that a squared minus b squared factors out into a plus b, a minus b. So we have to take this question a little bit further. 3x squared and then x squared minus 9 factors out into x plus 3 and x minus 3. Now my next thing is I have to set everything equal to 0 and solve it. Okay, so if I divide both sides by 3, I get x squared equals 0 over 3, which is just 0. Taking the square root of x squared, square root of 0, 0, I get x equals 0. And you're actually saying plus or minus, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so I have 2 values, x equals 0. That's one of my answers, so I'm going to go ahead and square that off. Now my second answer is x plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3 from both sides, x equals negative 3. And finally, I have one more, x minus 3 equals 0, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides, x equals positive 3. So my answers are 0, negative 3, and 3. Now, by the way, I told you in class, whatever x is raised to, that's how many answers you have. Remember that x squared actually produced 2 answers, x equals 0 and x equals 0 again. So that's why there actually are 4, but we're only going to list 3 because the zeros repeat themselves. Okie dokie. So that was question 7 and 8. Let's go ahead and look at number 9. Solve x cubed plus x squared equals 4x plus 4. I'm going to go ahead and move everything on the left-hand side. Okay, and just double check, make sure I have all my signs okay. I see 4 terms, so I'm going to use grouping. And there's no GCF, by the way. So I'm going to group the first 2 together. And then I'm going to group the last 2 together. Now I'm going to take out the GCF. Alright, so the GCF of the first one is x squared. X cubed divided by x squared is x. Plus x squared over x squared is 1. The next 2, I'm going to take out a negative 4. Negative 4x divided by negative 4 is just x. And negative 4 divided by negative 4 is a positive 1. So again, if you do grouping correctly, like in the AC method, you'll see that inside the parentheses have to be exactly the same, which they are. So I factor that out, and I write what's left over, which is x squared minus 4 equals 0. Again, be careful, because I have a squared term minus a constant. And that looks to me like the difference of perfect squares, which it is, because x is squared and so is 4. It's a perfect square. So that factors out into x minus 2 and x plus 2. And remember, we have the x plus 1 from earlier. So now I have to set each one of these guys equal to 0 and solve. So x equals negative 1, that's my first answer. X equals 2, second answer, and x equals negative 2, third answer. All right, guys, thanks for watching questions 7 through 9.